You could either call this video wrap up of spring for all the books that I didn't make separate reviews for, or books other booktubers or authortubers recommended. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kat, and today I would like to talk about a couple of books that I read this spring and didn't film their separate reviews for. First off, because I saw it on Sam's channel over on Griffin Reads, The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. Honestly, I didn't remember much of this. I put it on my Libby waiting list, and the only thing I remember from her video is that the cat gets a POV chapter or several POV chapters, which is why I put it on my waiting list in the first place. And by the time I got it, I had no recollection of what this book was about, and I didn't read the blurb either, which I really should know by now is not the way to go. I should have a vague idea of what is happening unless somebody specifically tells me not to read the blurb, which is true for like Project Hail Mary. Anyway, I went into this book not knowing anything. You get a couple of POVs, and I still think the cat ones is actually the most interesting. Olivia seems to have a crush on a neighborhood cat, like a certain Tabby, and it is just adorable. And also really weird once you get to the conclusion of the story. The other thing that's weird about Olivia, this cat is super religious, which I don't claim to understand, nor do I need to understand it for the story. More importantly though, if animal cruelty or child abuse is an issue for you, then this is not the book for you. I don't want to say too much about the book itself because it would give away things, but it drops a couple of hints to make you think something specific, which you might not fall for, and then other revelations about a certain character almost come out of nowhere. So it certainly keeps you reading to figure out what is actually going on in the end. And I think overall it's a 3-star read for me because some of the things are just dark and gross. And I guess I wasn't really in the mood for that when I started this book. And the solution to what is actually going on actually gets directly addressed in the book as well. And it is one of the cliches or tropes that I'm not too fond of. But I will leave it at that to not put any spoilers in here. Next up, I think I saw this on Sarah's channel on Voyage Through Words, a memory called Empire by Arkady Martin, which is sci-fi, very heavy on the world building, you know, as you usually find in sci-fi. It took me a few pages to get into it, and I was rather slow going through this book. I'm not even sure why, because it's really, really good. It combines a lot of political intrigue with sci-fi and heavy world building and a murder investigation, all of which is done really well and really interesting. I enjoyed following Mahit around, who got sent to this Texcalan Empire, however you actually pronounce this correctly, don't ask me. She gets sent there as the new ambassador after the last one died, and she gets involved in a lot of intrigue, and she has to juggle quite a few balls to make it through this. And I really enjoyed following her. She is really into the culture of this empire, and you really get a good feel for how much she wants to be part of it, and how she feels alienated whenever it becomes clear that she can never truly be part of it because she didn't grow up in it and some things will forever be out of reach. It made me feel rather sorry for my heated points. There's something much bigger happening outside of the intrigue that they are dealing with in this first book. It's a bit like The Expanse, so all of the people you meet in there seem to be of human descent, but much like the Belters and people on Mars or on Earth, they spend so much time apart that you can just spot the differences between them. And much like in The Expanse, there is a bigger threat looming on the horizon as well. So yeah, overall I really, really enjoyed this book, even though it took me quite some time to get through it. I'm not sure why, but overall I think it deserves this, which would be 4.5 stars. Yeah, I can only recommend this if you're into heavy world building and political intrigue. Next up is Dealing with Dragons by Patricia C. Reed. I'm not sure how you pronounce this the American way. Actually, I would call it Raider, but that's not something you would say in English, I don't think, but whatever. I read this one because Julian Greystoke is doing read-alongs over on her channel, and she pointed out that the ones for good books get a lot less traction or a lot less attention, but because I hadn't read this book before, I went out and got it from the library before heading over and watching those videos. It says it's young adult, but while reading it I thought it was middle grade because it seems very young. Some of the things are possibly a bit more simple and less sinister than you would find in books that are targeted at older audiences. But overall it was a really cute read. I liked Simmarine quite a lot because she gets something in her head and then she does it. She sticks to her convictions and she doesn't want to get married, so she doesn't. She sets out and becomes a dragon's princess instead and actually does some of the housework, which already seems very un-princess-like, I'd say, especially compared to the other princesses she encounters while she's out with this dragon. Yes, Marine never waited around for anybody else to solve her problems and just took action herself. I appreciate that in a protagonist. Well, plus it had dragons, so I was already interested anyway. Overall, I think it's this cat for this book, and it's quite cute if you enjoy your dragons, a bit of magic, and a female protagonist who does her own thing. This is probably for you. The last of the books is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I think there are reviews all over YouTube for this, but the channel that I've watched a review on was, I think, Scientist Reads, Hugo's channel. It was overall a nice read about a girl who sells her soul to have more time and doesn't quite get what she bargained for or what she expected. So while it was interesting on a very personal level, if you just stick with Addie and later Henry, if you just stick with those characters in their very small universes, then it kind of works. But because Addie is around for 300 years, there was something that really bothered me. She lives through a lot of historical events because, I mean, she's around for hundreds of years, right? But she never really gets involved with any of them. While I get that she says that, oh yeah, while history is happening and you're living it, you don't know what is history. It's like, yes, okay, but some of these things are clearly big enough that even while you're in it, you should figure out that they are somewhat important. But this is very much just a story about Addie and what she herself does without getting involved in any historical events, really. She does help with spying on Nazi Germany at some point, but this is about 2 pages in the whole book, and it has very little bearing on her story or on herself at that point. The storm on the Bastille gets a couple of sentences. The First World War gets a brief mention, but she's never involved in anything. Well, if she understands war is coming and she runs, okay, obviously I get that, but I don't know, she seems weirdly detached from a great many events around her, which I think is in turn why I didn't feel a lot of attachment or great attachment to Addie and what was going on with her. For the brief glimpses on the very personal level where it's about her family or the fact that she can no longer make a mark. Just those parts, yes, those worked and touched me as well, but her lack of involvement in everything that is going on around her seems really strange. And then on a more everyday level, because people forget her as soon as a door closes between them or whatever, but she hangs out with some people for a whole day and night. Like the first time she goes on a date and actually sleeps with somebody. She spends the whole day with them and then the night. Now, because of the fact that they forget she exists every time you close the door behind him, or that they lose her for more than like 10 seconds or something, how does this work? Do they either go to the bathroom together, or does neither of them ever pee? Because from a very everyday point of view, I don't see how this works. It's a really strange thing to worry about, but once I thought of it, that's all I could think about whenever she spent several hours or a whole day with somebody. It's like, how does this work? Yeah. But because of the detachment that Addie feels for most of the things that go on in the world, I think it's discount for me. It's overall still an enjoyable read, and it is a very interesting concept and idea, obviously. But I didn't feel much for Addie, really. So it is what it is. I think that's it for now. Those are 4 books I read because of other booktubers or authortubers, really. I'm sure I'm forgetting some books. Or maybe I did separate reviews for them, or I was just so busy with the read-along for the worst book I've read in 20 years. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments whether you've read any of these books and what you make of them. I'll be back next week with another video. Like and subscribe if you want to help this channel out. And thank you for your time. Bye!